So we have a lovely, healthy tropical aquarium here. It's got some beautiful Corydoris in it. It's got some rummy nose. It's got a beautiful red-tailed black shark in the back there. A rainbow shark, actually. Some nice little guppies. Some harlequin rasbora. Some live and fake plants. Some Texas holy rock. It's got a nice big aquarelle filter down here. It's got plenty of surface agitation. Some bubbles. Everyone looks very happy. Could definitely add some extra fish if you wanted to.
There are some horny-nosed catfish in there somewhere.
Yeah, some bristle-nosed cats, yeah. Maybe like some guamis or a couple of extra fish would be an option if you ever wanted to. Beautiful. Due for a top-up. Hello, buddy, how are you? What happened here is half a dozen guppies were added to this tank, and only one of them seemed to want to survive. And one thing I'd be very concerned about is some big golden panchaks up the top here. Now, golden panchaks are a beautiful fish, but they can be very aggressive. So be careful when introducing things like little guppies, because little guppies with a more aggressive golden panchaks may experience an issue. Now, this fella here seems to have survived, but he may have evolved to figure out to stop swimming up the top, because the top is obviously the domain of these fellas. If we went for like larger sailfin mollies or something, might be a better option if we want fish on the top. And with all your little fish, you have to be careful when you've got things like your bigger rainbow sharks and things, because as they get bigger, you might find them knocking off the smaller ones. You've got to keep them a little bit comparative. If you're losing small fish, then you've got to take action. Fish keeping is 50% water quality, so testing your water on a semi-regular basis is very important, and it's 50% food quality. So some foods are better than others. I'm not a big fan of your like heavily processed, pressure cooked foods. I like either your cold extruded foods like your probiotics from probiotics from New Life Spectrum, or your slow cooked foods. Now this fella, he needs a little bit more food. So if you look underneath this fella, you can see his belly going up. So he's scavenging around trying to get something to eat, but there's not enough food going in this tank because you can see that his belly is going up. Most of the other fish do look okay. The tetras are slightly skinny. So I'd basically like to see a higher quality food fed and maybe just a little bit more of it. And adding a wafer is going to be a good idea, because the wafer is going to allow you to slowly feed the fish. So each time you do a water change, you really want to be doing a gravel clean. And it's really good too to give the rocks a bit of a rearrange every now and then.
Yeah, well I usually do that when I do it myself, and it didn't do better than the rain last time.
Yeah, and as you said, putting them out in the sun is a great way of putting them back so they go nice and white. And then keeping enough catfish to help control the algae is always a good idea. And getting a few digging fish doesn't hurt too. Some fish that'll sort of dig around in the substrate. It sucks for the plants, because they do tend to dig up the plants. But it's wonderful for helping to keep the tank a bit cleaner. And the probiotic food, that'll keep a lot of the waste out of the gravel, because the bacteria in the probiotic food will allow the waste to break down physically. I really love these canister fillers. These are aquarelles, and they're very easy to clean, and I find they're very good. But in this case, where it's been set up, it's got a little bit of a kink. So what I'm just going to do is give that a cut and see if we can remove the kink, because you want to try not to have the pipes longer than they need to be, and at the same time we don't want them kinking. So at the moment, the ammonia is 0, nitrite is 0, nitrate is 0. I've just cleaned the canister filter and it was actually quite clean. Because there's not a lot of fish in the tank, that's not surprising, but I'm going to suggest that we go for Spectrum's probiotic food and also get a bit of Denichi colour. What do you reckon, mate? Because fish keeping is 50% water quality and 50% food quality. And what I don't want is heavily processed, pressure cooked foods. Otherwise, the nutrients in the food aren't really available to the fish. What do you think, Kat? I think it's got Texas holy rock in it, so it is common that the pH and KH is always going to be high. In this case, the pH is fairly high. The KH was about 5 or 6, which we won't bother changing, and the GH was quite high. So I'm not going to add any additives to this tank at the moment, except for the water ager. And these fish prefer a more acidic environment, but as you can clearly see they do get used to this environment, and the idea of trying to make this water acidic would not be an option because of the rock that's in it. So it's all pretty much fine. Adding a water ager, it's very important to fill the bucket up with water before you add the water ager, because I've seen people add the water ager to the empty bucket and then they fill it up. But the water ager basically works within about 3 seconds. So it'll bond whatever's in there. So if you put a little bit of water ager in there, good catch, and then away you go. But what you don't want to do is expect the water ager to do anything to water that's not there. So the water ager goes in, it bonds straight away. It'll look for chlorine, chloromones. If it doesn't find that, it'll find ammonia, nitrite, but it'll find something to bond with because it's unstable. So you cannot add it and then fill the water up. And that applies to the tank. If you're filling the tank up, you want to add the little bit of water, then you add a bit of water ager, then add a bit of water, then add a little bit of water ager. And with this one, this is primed, it's a very good water ager. And if you use a higher volume of this water ager, it'll do more because it'll find more. It'll get rid of, it won't get rid of, it'll bond up ammonia, nitrite and so forth, so it's not toxic to the fish, but you will be able to test it. So this little air pump, I've just opened up, and inside it is a diaphragm, and you can see there's a tear in the diaphragm. So over time, the air pumps do tend to get noisy because that tear would allow this to shake around more than it needed to. So replacing that diaphragm would definitely make the pump more powerful and would potentially make it quieter. Having an aquarium, having the right tools is really, really a good idea. So this is just a good old Bob's Your Uncle algae magnet. But if you went and got yourself a flipper, the one with the razor blade on the front, you'll never look back. They're so much more efficient. So when I service an aquarium, obviously cleaning the tank is on the agenda, and making sure that I'm testing the water and making sure the fish are fed well is all very important. But the other thing I'm always interested in doing is trying to give you any advice possible to improve the situation. So cleaning the tank is one thing, but while I'm here, I try to fill you up with suggestions for how to actually make it better. And the funny thing is some people actually get offended by my suggestions. So you can't win them all. You can offer someone advice on how they can make your tank better, and most people really appreciate the advice, and then some people go and get offended by it. Anyway, that's life. I think people love being offended these days. And then it's good to add a little bit of stability. What that does is help to recolonize the good bacteria that's in the aquarium. And with these products like stability, you really want to keep them in the fridge. You'll find they last longer once you've opened them. So everyone's looking nice and happy now. We're going to want to start feeding better quality food. Getting some extra fish wouldn't hurt. And I'm a big fan of change. Swapping things around, getting different fish keeps you interested. But we want to be watching the bellies. We don't want to see the bellies going up. We don't want them too fat either. It's very common when people first get into fish, they start off feeding them too much. Feeding them too much is very bad. And then often we'll tell people not to feed them so much, and then it's very common that they'll overcompensate. And then next thing you know, the fish are too thin. So we don't want them too thin. And then even changing the style of fish every now and then is a great idea, just to keep you interested. So this fella is a flying fox, and he looks just like a Siamese algae eater, but he doesn't eat the blackbeard algae. Now there he is, that stripy fella. And you see he's got very defined stripes, and he's a very beautiful fish. He looks gorgeous, and he's a great scavenging algae eating fish, but he's not really the one for the blackbeard algae. So if you added some Siamese algae eaters, they're not quite as striking in colour as the flying fox, but they're better for the algae. But all these guys tend to wrestle. So you got to expect a little bit of chasey going on, because they're all a little bit aggressive to each other. So with aggressive fish, the more of them you get, the less problems you tend to have. But when you don't have too many, and they've got plenty of territory, they tend to be aggressive.